The Knicks offseason continues with a lot of questions, although some have been answered and some have not. Still don't know if the Knicks have a chance to get Giannis Antetokounmpo. We discussed that last week. We did find out in a report by Stefan Bondy that the Knicks will not be pursuing Kevin Durant in a trade. So how do the Knicks improve their roster? Now, a lot of this is going to have to be done probably through free agency or trades, and the Knicks are going to try to get a little bit deeper for the 2025-2026 season. So joining me to break it all down, go through some trades, check some things out on Spotrac is my guy, Bryan Fonseca. Does a fantastic job with me here for the New York Post and on New York Got Game Weekly Live. Bryan, what's up, man?
What is going on, Dex? How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. Look, a lot of people are nervous in these streets. They're nervous about the fact Knicks don't have a head coach yet. They're worried about what's going to go on in free agency. So we're going to try to, help the people out. Give them some answers. That's what we're going to try to do. But Bryan, first, I want to talk about this because when you look at what the Knicks can do this offseason, they do have the taxpayer mid-level exception to use. And so I guess my first question to you is, can the Knicks get some quality players with that to add depth to this roster for next season?
Well, in order to win a championship, they might have to. And they themselves said in the very first line when they fired Tom Thibodeau that essentially they're a championship or bust team now. They didn't say those exact words, but that's what the implication was. So to temper expectations, first of all, the taxpayer mid-level, the max you can offer somebody is 2 years and 11.6 million total. So 5.6 million, roughly 6 million the second year after the fact, whether it be a guaranteed year, player option, team option, whatever. But that's the max that you have to play with. Now, on top of that, let's also outline that teams didn't really use this in that way last year. The Denver Nuggets used it. They used it on Dario Saric. They gave him the full taxpayer mid-level exception. But there were other teams who had access to a taxpayer mid-level or even the full mid-level exception, didn't opt to use it for salary cap reasons, for second apron reasons. And this is relevant because last year was the first year we had this new collective bargaining agreement that really complicated all of these different things and that made it less and less and less fun to follow very closely. But still, the Bucks didn't use theirs, the Lakers didn't use theirs, the Pacers didn't use theirs. They would have become an apron team if they did. They did not. They weren't interested in paying to that degree. They reportedly will this year. We'll see. The Cavs didn't use theirs. They would have been an apron team also if they did. The Knicks were too close to the second apron to really use theirs, and this was before the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. The Knicks do project to be a first apron team in all likelihood. They are going to be at the start of this unless they can get away from it and shed like a pretty good $4 million level of salary or something along those lines. We can get to that a little bit later. Suns didn't use it. Wolves didn't use it. They had Towns at the time. The Celtics didn't use it either. And the Thunder got creative with one of their signings. They didn't use the MLE in this sort of way, and it wouldn't really apply to the Knicks anyway because they have the full mid-level at the time, but they used a $3 million room exception to get AJ Mitchell. So that's one mechanism you could also use, and you could also look at that as a barometer. It's like, oh, an AJ Mitchell level player went for that. Memphis distributed their mid-level exception in a couple different ways. They used $2 million on Scottie Pippen Jr. and $2 million on Jay Huff, and both of them were productive players this past year. So can the Knicks find somebody with a taxpayer mid-level exception? They might have to, is really the answer.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to see, and this is what we're going to do. We're going to try to go through some of these. I guess before we do that, right, I think the other thing to sort of look at is what are some of the positions of need here, right? And you can go, and that's what we're going to kind of target and go through because, look, the Knicks need depth. We know that, but it's like, where do they need the depth, right? So, and what kind of skills do they need from the depth? So they need some shooting. 3-point shooting was a problem. They're going to need some of that. They also could use some size off the bench. We saw the size hurt them in the playoffs, Bryan. Landry Shamet as a defender. DeLon Wright was one of the better defenders in the playoffs. He's just 6'5". Can they get some signings, where they can get some size there? That's very interesting to me. So what I want us to do, last time we did this thing, we looked at the trade machine. This time we're going to bring up Spotrac, and we're going to bring it up here so everybody can see what we're doing. And we've got the 2025 NBA free agents for everybody to look at here and look at how this looks. And you see all the free agents here. So, Bryan, is there a position you want to look at first? You want to scroll through first? Maybe we could do some bargain shopping here that you want to do? What position would you like?
We could do this in a couple different ways because I also have 20 names on a list that are
You,
that I
you,
think
you're out here looking like a true GM. You got 20 names. What, you trying to audition for Leon Rose's job here? I think.
no, absolutely. I don't want that headache.
But
I do.
what's the position you think of from your 20? What's the position that you feel like, all right, this is the position they got to go for? They need most, that they should use all or some of their taxpayer MLE on.
So I would turn this and ask you, what is
Mm,
more pressing? Is it to fill? Because here's the thing you have to consider: do they
yeah.
trade Mitchell Robinson or Josh Hart or somebody else? But do they trade
Hmm.
Mitchell Robinson? We'll just using him as an example. Do they trade him and then have to fill up a backup center spot? You could say, oh, Ariel Hawkporte could win the job. But in all likelihood, you're not going to roll in with two centers, especially if one of them, Karl Anthony Towns, you probably want him at the four anyway, given how they played last year, the differences that they want to try this year, what have you. So, and at guard, you're losing, unless you want to use the mid-level exception to retain both of these guys, Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright. That would be underwhelming, I assume, for a lot of Knicks fans, but that's also one mechanism you could kind of use, is like, hey, you could just keep those two guards and actually play them. But what do you think is more pressing? Do they have to get a guard or do they have to get a big? Because I have answers for both. Or not answers, I should say. I
So,
have options for both.
so much of that depends on who the next coach is, right? And that's what makes it difficult to say. But if I had to guess, it's funny. I'm kind of going to kind of combine the players, right? And I'm say what they really need in totality is a
Wing,
wing
a third wing,
that can shoot the ball.
a
Yeah,
fourth wing, I guess. If you still
they
have
do a
Josh Hart.
fourth wing.
Yeah.
Fourth wing. I think somebody with size and positional versatility that can shoot the ball. So there's some names that come to mind for me. If that's my preference, then who on your list fits that? That we can look at. What if we look at, because wing is not going to look at. So I'm actually going to look at small forward here. I'm going to bring up small forward here
Okay.
for us to look at. Okay, and we're
Well,
looking.
some wings may be shooting guards, and some wings may even be listed at power forward. But
That's true.
a couple guys I have on a list that fit the wing
Mhm.
criteria, and I'll just go through them.
I have one that I see right here as I'm scrolling down. I don't
Yeah,
know.
so that
Let me ask if he's on your
sure,
list.
yeah,
Torrey Craig. Looking
he
at
was
Torrey Craig here.
he was
Is he on your
not. He
list?
was in our in-season list,
He
so
was.
I think he's somebody who should be considered. To be fair, I had to go through a lot of different names, and Torrey Craig, because he didn't play much last year, didn't
And
pop up.
I'm bringing up Torrey Craig so people can see here. He did not play much last year, as Bryan said. You see the money he made in his 2025 26 cap hit. You see he's unrestricted free agent as well too. Just coming off a 2-year contract where he earned the minimum. So I guess my question here is, Bryan, is he somebody you would use the MLE on? You might not be. You might be able to split it with him
Yes.
because he just got the minimum last year. So this could be a good value move for the Knicks. But is he also? He's 34 years old, 8 years experience. Is he a guy that you think can play for the Knicks?
Well, the latter portion, I mean, if they're going to open up their rotation, it'd be nice.
Yeah,
You
it
know,
would.
like,
Yeah.
but I also think he's somebody you can get on the veteran minimum. So I don't know if he's somebody you need to use a portion
Okay.
of MLE on.
Okay. So
That's
here's
just
the
my
thing.
guess.
No. But here's the thing. This is why it's good that you're talking about this, because when you look at a player like Torrey Craig, and if the valuation is what you just said, then you probably don't want to use the taxpayer MLE on him, right? So not saying that you wouldn't want to sign to Torrey Craig, because
Right.
we agree with that, but do you want to spend the tax MLE or a portion of it on him when you think you can sign him for the veterans minimum? He just had that last year. You probably could get him for cheaper. Okay, so let's back out of that with Torrey Craig. I agree with you. I think his value is a little bit less. I think you can get him. You can get him for cheaper. As we look through this list here, I'm looking at some of these names, right? Duncan Robinson has an opt-out. Kelly Oubre Jr., player option. Would he opt out after a season in Philadelphia? He probably thinks he could get a little bit more money. How about Zaire Williams with the coming off the Nets, restricted free agent? They do have his bird rights though.
Yeah, I wouldn't play with restricted free agents.
I wouldn't either. You're getting into,
I would not be in that market. Nope.
Yeah, you're getting into. So I'm going to throw one out for Knicks fans that I know is going to either make them upset or happy here. How about Kevin Knox Jr.?
Oh my god!
No,
All
don't
right,
have
let
to
me.
throw it at
I'll start throwing you some names.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Throw me some names. Or is there anybody on this? As we're looking at this list of small
I have
forward,
a familiar Nick who's a better fit, and that would
is
be
he on
Alec.
this list?
That would be Alec Burks,
Oh
who's
wow.
who's with the
I'm
Heat
gonna bring
last
him
year.
up. Alec Burks would be as a shooting guard.
Yes.
Very much likely. So let's see where Alec Burks
We'll
is
get
on
to
the list.
listen. If you're watching,
Got him
we'll
right
get
here.
to better names. I promise you, we'll get to more interesting names. But like this is the playpen of crap that you're in. Like with the not with the taxpayer mid level exception. Again,
All right. So
Dario Saric got the
tell
whole
me
thing
why
last year,
Alec.
and he was the only one in the league.
Okay, so tell me why Alec Burks, Nick fans are familiar with him, signed for the minimum last year, was with Miami, had a pretty solid season in the time he played. Why do you think Alec Burks could be somebody the Knicks would want to bring back? That's not going to excite the fan base, too. I'll be honest.
I do think there are some fans who are like, hey, there's familiarity there. You know that he can shoot threes as long as you don't try to play him at point. Like I think that's sort of the thing there. Like he started some games for the Heat also down the stretch, beside like Davion Mitchell and Tyler Hero when they had some injury issues because they tend to have injury issues. But Alec Burks did shoot 42% from three last year, 42.5% from three last year. And that's really the main thing. It's like you want any of your guards that you're going to play in your rotation off the bench to be able to shoot threes. And I think when you're in a championship or bust position, which again, this is how I think you want to look at finals or bust, but regardless, if you're in a position where you're trying to win a championship, you want role players who you can depend on, who you can trust. And I would be, if I'm whoever the Knicks coach is, I think they could look at someone like an Alec Burks and say, I can play him for 20 minutes if I need to, or I can play him for 18 minutes if I need to, which is what he averaged last year with the Heat. He's had 2 runs with the Knicks. There's a level of familiarity there. Now, both of them were with Tibbs, but
Correct.
both of them were also with Leon Rose. So, and I don't know if he'll cost the entire, like, it probably would surprise me if he cost the entire thing. Like, you also might be able to get him on a veteran minimum.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You might be able to.
But he shot 42% from three last year. So, like, I do think he'll have amongst the contenders, like, they'll look at him and be like, oh, okay, this could be at 8th or 9th man. I mean, the Heat signed him last year. And while the Heat season didn't go the way that they planned, they initially had expectations with Jimmy Butler that they would be a better playoff team, a more competitive playoff team. So I think he's a guy that the good teams will target as role player, 8th, 9th, 10th man, can shoot X from three and can play double-digit minutes.
Yeah, no, I like this one. It's not a sexy name for Knicks fans. It is familiar. I do like it. Folks can see the numbers here. I think what you said, and you're right. He's probably due a raise based on what he shot from three. We know how valuable that is in the NBA right now, and so that's that. What else you got, Brian? Who else should we be looking at here?
Are we still sticking to wings?
Yes, let's still do that.
I wonder what Amir Coffey gets.
Okay, so he's a guy who was on my list. He'd probably be. I'm assuming he'd be. It's funny with him. You don't know if he's in small forward, power forward on here. He's not on small forward. He's probably
shooting guard. Then he's a wing.
You think he'd be more of a shooting guard? All right,
he's
so
absolutely
let's
a
see
wing.
here.
And per Basketball Reference, he was listed mostly as shooting guard last year. But whatever. Like in the NBA, like you're a guard, you're a wing, you're a big at this point. Unfortunately, positions don't exist the way that they used to. But Amir Coffey shot 40% from three last year.
Yep.
On decent volume, 3.5 attempts per game, the most of his career. Played 24 minutes a game for a good Clippers team who a lot of people thought were potentially the second best team in the West or had the best chance of pushing the Thunder out West. That ended up being Denver, who beat them. But regardless, the Clippers were, in fact, a good team and are going to try to be a good team again. But Amir Coffey is a free agent. He's been with the Clippers for a long time.
8 years. 8 years he's been with the Clippers.
I'm sure they're gonna have his bird right. So they're in a position where they can try to keep him, although they're gonna be like financially, they're gonna I don't know if they're gonna have a lot of options. I think we're also sleeping on them in the Kevin Durant sweepstakes a little bit. But I think with Amir Coffey, if he's a free agent and if the Clippers aren't going to keep him, he's the type of dude who I would look at also he has more size than an Alec Burks. He has more size than a lot of these other wings. Like he's 6'7". You're going to be able to throw him on multiple positions, which is good. He's a career 38% three-point shooter, not on a ton of volume, but that's years of reps of doing it. Yep. And while not deep, he does have some measure of playoff experience. He's played 20 career playoff games with the Los Angeles Clippers. So it's not somebody where, you sort of worry about like, oh, how's he going to be in the playoffs? Not that he's been awesome in that spot. And a good portion of that was garbage time, but still, like, he's been on good teams. Can he be somebody again with this exception? You're looking at someone who can be in the rotation. Ultimately, with the Nuggets last year with Dario Saric, he was a rotation player, but when it came down to it, the team was too thin, and he was a guy where it was tough to rely on when you really look at the makeup of their roster. So the parts around also matter, but you're trying to hit a rotation player or two if you split it up with this. And I think Amir Coffey could at least be that.
All right, so you think he at least could be that? And I'm sorry, I misspoke. He has 6 years of experience. He's been 6 years with the Clippers, not 8. He did shoot 40% from downtown last year. As Bryan said, he has some size. I think he could be a good value play. I wonder what he gets on the open market. That's the interesting thing for me with him. What does he get in the open market? He is in his prime. He's 27. He will be 28 in a couple of days, actually, on June 17th. So I wonder what he could get there. All right, so we'll take a look back through Spotrac, which has all these guys listed for us. A guy I wanted to look at some bigger type players that we're seeing now. Look, you're assuming Darius Saric will be on the market, Bryan. Precious Achiuwa, I think, likely would not come back. There's a couple of guys here on this list when you look at the bigs as I'm scrolling through it.
There's one that I love that I already see.
And there's one that you love, and there's two that I like, but one would be more of a flyer than the other. So I'm gonna start with him, and it's Jake LaRavia. Okay, Jake LaRavia traded from Memphis last year. They did not pick up his 4th-year option, and then they traded him to Sacramento. Okay, 23 years old, has got some size, had the best season of his career before he was traded. I think the Grizzlies just knew, hey, we're not keeping this guy, so why don't we look at what we can get for him? I think that was kind of like, let's see what we can get. All right, shot 42% from downtown last year, 47% from the field. These are all career highs, okay, for him. 20 minutes a game he played, didn't start any games, just under 7 points a game, 2.4 assists, 3.9 rebounds. I think he's got some upside. And I think one thing you know about the Knicks and Leon Rose, Bryan, is they want to try to stay younger. They don't want to get an older player out. Stefan Bondy reporting today that they're not trying to go after Kevin Durant. I don't think they want to add age to this core. I think they want to stay younger. The thing is, do you think what you saw from Jake LaRavia last year is sustainable? And would you take a flyer on him? And is he worth the taxpayer MLE? Is he worth the TMLE? Or is he somebody that's just a veteran minimum guy here? What do you say about Jake LaRavia?
I also wonder that even though his contract got declined, would he and his agent think because he's so young, he can get more money? Now, maybe. I don't know what the money for the middle class of players is going to look like in this era of the NBA, where a lot of guys are going to be forced to take deals like Tyus Jones, who are probably worth more. But like Tyus Jones previously, when he signed with the Suns, people thought he was going to get a lot more money than he did. And there may be some players pigeonholed into that, which is where you could actually potentially find value. Is Jake LaRavia one of those guys? I don't know. Do I trust him in a playoff series? He hasn't played a playoff game yet.
That is fair. That is a fair point.
So that's sort of where I would pause, because it is an interesting upside play if you believe the upside is still there. He was 19th overall, drafted in 2022.
Yep.
There's only a few years of experience there, but at the same time, like, he's somebody who has an interesting skill set. I feel like I'd want more of a sample size for someone that, if I'm looking to win the East, I probably would need, if I'm Leon Rose, someone I know I can trust. Not to say like it absolutely has to be a veteran. We mentioned Amir Coffey. He's young-ish, but 6 years, you're a vet at this point, but also has some measure of playoff experience. Not deep playoff experience, but some measure of playoff experience. I've never seen Jake LaRavia in that atmosphere. Maybe that matters for something. Maybe it doesn't.
Maybe it does. Maybe it doesn't. I want to I was looking at the list, and I think I know the guy who you also are intrigued, and he played with the Sixers last year. Am I correct on this?
Yes.
Gershon Yabusele, the
Yes.
Frenchman. And you look at him here now. You're high on him, but I have to be honest, man. I do have some concerns, and we know he can help stretch the floor, which is something the Knicks need from the big. So you could have him in some lineups. If you keep Mitchell Robinson, you can have him next to Mitchell Robinson. He can help stretch the floor for you. I don't know how much you could play him with Cat. And the reason I don't know how much you could play him with Cat is his defense. It's a little bit shaky there defensively.
He was in Philly, to be fair.
That's true. That's a good point. It's a little bit so that's but how versatile can you play him with the Knicks? I hear your point. You're right.
Yes.
But how versatile can you play him with the Knicks? I think he's that four that pairs perfectly next to a Mitchell Robinson, right? Even if he's coming off the bench for minutes and gives them some shooting at that position, because that's what the Knicks kind of needed at that position. Somebody could stretch the floor a little bit. They didn't have that with Precious Achiuwa. He was hit or miss sometimes with the corner three. Gershon Yabusele, he can do that. I want to bring up his stats here for the folks to see. This is a guy who shot 38% from downtown, 50% from the field. So even efficient, and he's got a wide body. He can play well inside too. Was averaging just over 27 minutes a game. So he played a lot in Philly. This was a good signing by Philly. He's now probably upped his value a little bit. I also wonder, even though I think we both like him and I could see him sign for the Knicks, here's my question, Brian. Did he play too well that he might get more than the TMLE? Right? I'm not sure if they can get him. Yeah.
It's possible. I mean, look, now, does he have extensive playoff experience? No, although he did play in a bunch of playoff games when he was with the Celtics for the first couple of years of his career before he went overseas. He didn't play big minutes in any of those games, really. He averaged a single-digit amount of minutes. But I watch him, and he's somebody I could absolutely see in a playoff series. I could see him in a rotation for a good team. The Sixers had ambitions last year. Remember, people were talking about them being a top 4 or 5 team in the East. That obviously crashed and burned because it starts with Joel Embiid being what he was and then Paul George being what he was. And then it just sort of metastasizes from there. And Gershon Yabusele gets to put up some numbers on a team that was going the other way. Now, I've seen Gershon Yabusele in big games. A lot of them are in Europe.
Yes.
Now people will roll their eyes at that. But the whole reason he's back in the NBA is because how he played in the Olympics. And I could see him having an 8th, 9th, 10th man role, which is, again, what you're targeting here, on a good team. I saw it in Real Madrid. I saw it in Asvel Basket in France. Like, he was one of the best players in Europe for a while. He was a champion at many different levels. He won EuroLeague, the Spanish Championship, Liga ACB, which is, I think, the best domestic league in the world outside of the NBA. Spain has a great league over there. Obviously, EuroLeague is the best league in the world outside of the NBA, but that incorporates all of Europe and also a couple other countries. He also was very good, really good in a stint in China. Like, he's been around, he's got experience. And I think if you have him on the roster last year, he probably plays ahead of some of the dudes that the Knicks were forced to play. Even in the playoffs. Like, now you bring up an interesting point though. Is he going to be somebody who commands more than the 5.6-ish million than the Knicks have to play with after this one season? I'd be curious to that, because if the Knicks or any team, frankly, with the taxpayer MLE comes to him with like, hey, here's 2 years, 11.6 million, and is his agent like, can you get part of somebody's full MLE, like 7-8 million for a couple years, and they can guarantee like a bigger role, perhaps? Like, that's an interesting one. But I think there's a fit for him, even though he doesn't have the same body of work as some other guys. And give him the financial playpen that you're in. I think this is one that can work. I do have some of the same questions though, like the fit with Towns and whatnot. But I think there's something to be said for him being an innings eater during the regular season and then playing 15-ish minutes per game in the playoffs.
No, I can see the fit's not the problem for me. I may have a little bit of concerns with defense. Here's the interesting thing, though. His agent, Andrew Morrison of CAA. So, I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying? Might be some things that could be worked out here. I'm just saying, the CAA conspiracists are going to be out here on that. All right, Brian, I'm gonna give a couple more real quick here too that I was thinking about. If you go back to guards, right? And maybe some wings too. I'm gonna throw another wing here. Gary Trent Jr.
Yes, that's a sexy name. Yeah,
you can say that's a sexy name. Gary Trent Jr., and I think he'd be here under the shooting guards. As we look, there we go. We got Gary Trent
Yeah,
Jr. Played with the Bucks last year, bringing him up. Last year was the end of a long deal for Gary Trent Jr. Or did he sign? No, he signed as a free agent with the Bucks. He signed as a free agent with the Bucks for
the
not much
minimum,
money, for the minimum.
two
Yeah, he signed
million
for the minimum.
after
Um,
having a long
did have a
term
long
contract,
after
which
he
is
had that
real
3 year, 51.8 million dollar deal.
big contract too,
Right.
which is very
So
interesting.
listen, Gary Trent can give you some size. He can shoot the ball. Well, he shot 41% from downtown last year. He was playing 25 minutes a game. Look, that was a challenged defense in terms of the Bucks. Last year, he did score 11 points. There could be a role for a guy like him here. He's still only 26 years old, right? And again, we're looking at guys where they're right in that age range of what the Knicks would want. Gary Trent Jr. kind of fits that. What do you think of him?
He has a compelling case to be like the pound for pound number one target on this entire list that we're talking
Mm,
about in terms of realistic targets. So I do wonder though if his agent, who you see it there, it's Rich Paul.
Rich Paul. Mm-hmm. Yep.
I do wonder if Rich Paul will try to get him more, maybe even much more than the
Mm,
taxpayer mid-level exception, given what he demonstrated last year in the playoffs in particular. We talk about playoff guys. Gary Trent Jr., he's played in 16 playoff games. He's been a part of 3 different playoff runs. And the last one was the best one. If you
yep.
watch the playoffs last year in Milwaukee, he was one of the only guys trying to like do anything next to Giannis Antetokounmpo in that series.
Yeah.
He averaged 19. He got a bunch of steals in that too. His defense was much maligned early on in his career, and he's become a much better, more competent defensive player over
Yeah,
the
he has.
years.
Hmm.
And he's been getting credit for that. So that's great. In the playoffs, he shot 50% from 3, only 5 game samples, but he did it in 8.8 attempts per game, as a matter of fact. So translation, in the playoffs last year, he shot 22 of 44 from 3, 5 game sample against the Indiana
Mm.
Pacers. Look, will that series alone make him more money? I mean, I'd be surprised if he signs for the minimum again. I think
Yeah, I'd be
he'd get more.
stunned. I'd be stunned.
I would think he'd get more than that. I would think Rich
Right.
Paul would ensure that. But like if you can get him for that number, yeah, he might be the pound for pound number one guy because he's also a guy, and the Bucks did start him in 3 of the 5 playoff games that they had. He's a guy that you can start. You will play him off the bench, obviously, but one of the adjustments you can make is like and I don't know if Josh Hart's going to start next year,
Yeah, see, that's what you're going to what I thought about. What if he's the kind of guy, and this is a
that you
good
can
point by
start him
you,
next to
that you
Jalen
can start
Brunson.
next to Jalen Brunson and you can bring Josh Hart off the bench. He kind of gives you that flexibility. He seems like that kind of guy. Out of all the guys we mentioned here, he's that kind of guy that could do that. And that might be the best value play. That might be why you give him the full TMLE. Now,
Yeah.
there's also the question that you're bringing up, especially with his agent being Rich Paul. Does his agent feel he can get more than that? And I think there is a world where you can get more than that. But I think why I agree with you, he's the pound for pound best guy on this list of players that we just went through and looked at and pulled up all their stats, is the fact that he gives you that versatility. There's a world in which he could start next to Jalen Brunson. I think he can hold his own defensively, Brian. Like I think he could hold his own defensively.
And he
Where
will have
he
to.
won't be weak.
And here's the thing, like, and this is why he could start in place of Josh Hart. Josh Hart could still play more minutes. Josh Hart could still
Fair.
close if he's playing
Right.
well.
Right.
But he's a better spacer. He's a better shooter,
There
lifelong
you go.
career shooting. Like that's really what it comes down to. Defensively, obviously. Josh Hart, you respect his defense as well. But Gary Trent Jr., like I wouldn't say there's a Grand Canyon level drop off or anything like
Right.
that. This is a career 39% 3-point shooter. Josh Hart is not that.
He's
Him
not.
next to Jalen Brunson,
Right.
him next to Jalen Brunson makes a lot of sense. So like he'd be the guy. But I do think he can get more. I mean, you're coming off a year where you played with the Milwaukee Bucks, who say what you want, playoff team, 41% from 3, thrived in a playoff situation, averaged double-digit amount of points again, which he does every year. Like I would think he can get more, but this is the advantage of being a team like the Knicks, not really market size necessarily. I'm not
Point.
going to that point,
Great
but
point.
it's about being a contender.
Yep.
And teams like this is where an Alec Burks will look. This is where Gary Trent Jr. will consider like all these different guys who want to win. Like they'll take an exception. Maybe they'll take an exception to be part of a team that can win a championship. So there's a world where you can pull something like this off that may seem surprising, but it's like, hey, this team could win a title. So yeah, Gary Trent Jr. would join something like that.
They would. I think the point you make there is a good one. There are going to be guys that are going to look to come to the Knicks because they were so.
Do you want a few more?
2 wins.
You want a few more before we go?
No, we're gonna. No,
some rapid fire. No.
Yeah. Well, real quick, rapid fire. Let's go real quick.
Right,
yeah, because you had a big list and you're out here trying to be GM. We know see you trying to be GM. So let's go. Go ahead.
Names that we didn't get to.
Yes.
DeAnthony Melton, who had ACL
I like
surgery.
that coming off the ACL injury. I do like that. It's a flyer play. Now, here's the thing: can you get him for the minimum or not? That's the question. I would say on that, real quick.
Yeah,
I would say, can you get him for the minimum or not? Yeah, go ahead. What else?
Chris Boucher, a little chaotic. I don't know if
so. Real quick, I'll say to that, he's been linked to the Knicks for a couple of years, even in times when they were talking about with OG Anunoby. You like his size; he does help you stretch the floor a little bit. I don't know what he gets in the open market. He's another guy I could see just getting the minimum.
I gotta ask, but Chris Paul.
This is a good one. I don't think
you love him.
I love Chris Paul.
I don't know if you love him to back up Jalen Brunson, but you love him.
See, he kind of because Chris Paul's such a good leader, so you kind of are also paying for the value you would get in the locker room with him. Now, if Chris Paul's giving you 15 minutes for a night to back up Jalen Brunson, here's what I'll say: it's gonna be better than what you saw from. I understand it's my fellow Steeler fan and campaign, but it's got to be better than that, right? And Chris Paul's going to be steady. He kind of helps with the pace of the Knicks. If they're not trying to play faster, yeah, I'm fine with that. If he's going to sign for the veterans minimum, I wouldn't be mad at that. He's steady at point guard. He's not going to kill you. It hurts a little bit on defense. He's not as good a defender as he once was.
Sure,
it's another small guard, but yeah, that's not bad. That's
five more quickly. Larry Nance Jr.
Like Larry Nance, good size, good energy, hustle guy. Wish he spaced the floor a little bit better. You probably should get him for the veterans
threes,
minimum.
But on limited volume.
He's limited volume with it. But he can shoot it. He also is not going to hurt you defensively as a big off the bench. I don't hate it.
Availability is the question with him.
That is the question. I agree.
Taurean Prince.
Don't mind him. I
like him. I like him more than you. I think I could see the vision there, the fit there.
He can be a little streaky.
Oh yeah,
which is my concern. And I've talked to some people who've been around teams that he's been on, and they've told me, the streakiness is the concern, and is he going to be focused all the time? So I have a little bit of trepidation. Like in theory, he should work, but I'm not sure.
He's a spacer for sure. Speaking of spacers, Seth Curry.
Like him for the spacing, concerned a little bit about the size. Do the Knicks need another small guard? That's the concern for me there. I see how you're thinking though.
If Seth is more so, if you move on from Deuce, which I'm not advocating that they should, but if they did, he kind of like goes directly into that role. The only problem is Deuce is better defensively.
Much better defensively. Agree.
All right. Ben Simmons.
No.
I agree. And last,
I love that we both had nothing to add on that. We had nothing to add on that.
And last but not least, if you do move on from Mitchell Robinson and you do want Ariel Hawk-Purdy to compete with somebody for the backup job, may I introduce you or reintroduce you to someone who Bomani Jones, who we both admire, calls the Mac, Bismack Biyombo.
You can do worse at a backup center than Bismack Biyombo. He's a guy who can know his role. No. That's fine. I think he's a guy you can get for the veterans minimum. I think he's a guy who would want to come and sign here in New York. High energy. He's going to block shots. He's not going to mess it up defensively. Yeah, I'm fine. I'd be fine with that.
We had some fun.
Especially if you tried to flip Mitchell Robinson, is what you're talking about, into maybe a couple of role players.
If Mitchell Robinson becomes a less expensive role player or multiple role players or whatever, and you're like, okay, now you're going to try to sign another center and then push Ariel Hawk-Purdy like, hey, here's who you're going to battle with for the backup center job. Go win the job. Bismack Biyombo is a good fallback option if you can get it. And he started some games for the Spurs last year. So like
Yeah,
he is coming off of he's been in the league for so long. That's the other thing. He's a veteran who's played in the
veteran.
playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
So
Well, I'll tell you what, Brian. I like the list. Somebody's got to sign you up as GM. We see you out here trying to get another job.
no.
So I like the list. It's some good names. I think it's good names for Knicks fans to think about, because this is what a lot of what we're going to talk about around free agency. I think there's a lot of talk about swinging for big guys, and we did that last week and talking about Giannis. And now the Kevin Durant, rumors have been kind of shut down. I think it was good to look at this and look at what the Knicks realistically can do to improve their team and actually add some depth. We'll see how that all goes. They still have to hire a coach. There still is so much more to do in this Knicks offseason. That's my guy, Bryan Fonseca. Check him out, the New York Post, Action Network, other places. Also, New York Got Game Weekly Live with me here. B, appreciate you. We will do more Knicks offseason talk. There's a lot more to come. We'll be doing more soon. Thank you, man.
Drafts in 2 weeks and free agent season 3.
It's coming up soon.